Yo, guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk a little bit about uh, John Cena. Now, last week at Money in the Bank, uh, John Cena came out and announced his retirement tour. Basically, this will be his last year, and the tour will culminate in December. So it'll start in January, and then it will culminate in December. So all of 2025 basically will be his retirement tour. We'll be saying goodbye to John Cena. Now, going on 10 years ago, I started here on YouTube under a different name. Um, Basically, a name that was dissing him called Ugly Boy John. Basically, because I was at the time a Cena hater. I believed that John Cena had been on top for far too long. He had been on top at that point for 10 years. He won his first WWE championship in 2005 at WrestleMania 21 against JBL. And that would be his first of 13 championships. And from 2005 to 2015, basically, John Cena was the face of the WWE. He was the Hulk Hogan of this generation because after um, after the Attitude Era, WWE buys WCW and ECW. They have this imploded roster of talent from The Rock, from Stone Cold Steve Austin. Hulk Hogan is back in the company. All these guys, right? But at the same time, little, but they get the guys from OVW. The graduating class of OVW comes over in 2002, and part of that graduating class, one fourth of that graduating class, an all-star class, was John Cena. Randy Orton came over, Brock Lesnar, Batista, and John Cena. But over the next few years, those guys started to fade away. Brock Lesnar was the first star. Brock Lesnar was put in a high profile position, managed by Paul Heyman, going on to defeat The Rock for the WWE Championship at that year's SummerSlam. Randy Orton was put in a high position. They teamed him with Triple H and Ric Flair, and they formed Evolution. Batista, at first, no, he was put on SmackDown as Devon Dudley. They were trying to make Devon Dudley um, a singles wrestler, breaking up the Dudley Boys, and they put him as Reverend Devon, and Batista was his usher. Later on, they scrapped that idea. They moved Batista to Raw, and he became the fourth member of Evolution. So those two guys were in pretty good positions, but John Cena struggled initially. Um, and then once again, like I said, the Attitude Era was over. They needed a new name for this new era. So Vince McMahon came out. All the WWE superstars were facing him. This is around the same time that they took the F out. They switched the name from the WWF to the WWE. He told the fans, he told the wrestlers and the fans, you got to have ruthless aggression. So Kurt Angle's out there cutting a promo on SmackDown, and out comes John Cena. Now, John Cena had previously had been in, like I said, in OVW, which was Dangerous Danny Davis, not Dangerous Danny Davis, the Nightmare Danny Davis, and Jim Cornette's developmental territory, because Jim Cornette got tired of working behind the scenes at creative with Vince Russo. So they were noticing that WCW was closing, all ECW was closing, all the all the territories were now dried up in the early 2000s. So they said, well, they came up with a concept. Well, why don't we have a developmental territory? somewhere else. They had All South Wrestling for a while in I think it was Mississippi, but that really wasn't working out. So Nightmare Danny Davis already had his wrestling company, and he hired Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette's from the Louisville area, and they set up that promotion. And it was cool because these guys, the wrestlers, would get a chance to perform in front of live crowds before they hit the wrestling scene. And they had local TV. And as a matter of fact, in the areas that they promoted, around Kentucky, Tennessee, Ohio, um, they were pretty big stars. So, but Cena got just like later they would do Florida Championship Wrestling that would develop into NXT as it is today. But Cena got called up from there, and during that time when he was in OVW, Star Maker Kenny Bolin was his manager, and he was the prototype. He was basically a Terminator ripoff, acting like a machine, kind of a hokey gimmick. He come into the wrestling business from bodybuilding. He was trained by Rick Bassman. Originally, he's from West Newbury, Massachusetts, but he moved out to California to become a wrestler. And during that time, he got hooked up with Rick Bassman, the guy who trained the Ultimate Warrior and Sting in the 80s, trained him as well. And for a while, he wrestled in Ultimate Pro Wrestling, a local indie promotion out there in California, and went to OVW. At first, Vince McMahon didn't like him because he considered him a juice head. Vince McMahon did not want those big muscle-bound wrestlers that have been so synonymous with the WWF to be synonymous with the WWF in the 80s, to be synonymous with the WWF in the new millennium. So he did not like him when he first saw him in OVW. And John Cena wasn't that good in OVW, to be honest with you. But anyway, he gets called up in in 2002 with SmackDown. He has a hell of a match with Kurt Angle. He goes the distance. He's in his prototype outfit, and a lot of wrestlers after that coming up to him saying that they respect him, saying that he did a hell of a job going against a pro at that time, Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle hadn't been in the business all that long. Around that time, he first broke in around 98, 99 in Memphis. And on TV and WWF, he started wrestling in '99. So Kurt Angle was fairly new too, but still, he had been an Olympic gold medalist. He had a claim in the wrestling game, both pro wrestling and amateur wrestling. So Kurt Angle was a reputable name in the early 2000s, probably one of the biggest. I mean, hell, he headlined WrestleMania. He and Brock Lesnar, WrestleMania 19 the following year. So Cena goes the distance with him, and then they develop a rap gimmick around Cena. Apparently, they'd have been on tour in Germany, and he'd started freestyle rapping on the bus, and Stephanie McMahon heard it, and Stephanie McMahon said, "Wow, you could do that on TV." So it's a special Halloween episode of SmackDown with John Cena dressed as Vanilla Ice, rapping um, against other wrestlers. So that pretty much became his promo style because he wasn't that great at promos either. And his promo style would be that he would rap against opponents. And hey, Lisa, what's going on? And the way he would diss them was by rapping against them. You know what I mean? Like he would freestyle it. Like say he was facing the Big Show, he would say something about the Big Show. And then when he would get to the curse word of the rap song, the crowd would yell it out. Like he would say, "Big Show, you ain't nothing but a hoe," and then, something like that, right? And the crowd would yell it out. So that, UPN at that time, which SmackDown was on, wouldn't get in trouble. And it fit with UPN because UPN at that time was promoting a lot of black urban shows like the Parkers, like the Bernie Mac show, shows like that. You know what I mean? So they were catering to an urban black demographic, and here you have a rapper, even though he's a white rapper, as the star of your wrestling show. So it fit. So he comes out to at first Basic Thugonomics. That was his song. Chain, a chain around his neck, a spinner belt when he wins his first WWE Championship and United States Championship in 2004 against Big Show at Madison Square Garden. I was there for it. The crowd was loving him. He was on fire. When he wins his first championship, not world championship, just a title, the United States Championship, he puts the spinner belt around it. And of course, at that time, 50 Cent was huge in the music business, and 50 Cent had debuted his spinner chain on TRL. So there was a take on that. He called his fans the Chain Gang, which was, of course, a reference uh, to the Chain Gang on Rockefeller, which was Beanie Siegel and the Young Gunners, Young Chris, and all of them. And he started doing this, which was what Tony Yayo did in the So Seductive video. So a lot of hip hop references from Cena in the beginning. And that's what helped him get over. So fast forward to all throughout 2004, he has a great feud with Carlito. He gets kayfabe stabbed in the club by Carlito's bodyguard Jesus. But he's getting so popular that they want to move him up to the main roster. During this time, JBL was the WWE champion. JBL had this controversial storyline about illegal immigration against Eddie Guerrero, who was the champion at that time, going back from WrestleMania 20. And it was like this anti-Mexican storyline. They were positioning JBL under a new gimmick because for years he had been he had been under um, the APA or the Acolytes with Farouk, but they wanted to make him a singles wrestler as well. So they kind of made him an up-to-date new millennium version of a combination of J.R. Ewing from the TV show Dallas and the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. And they were using racism against Eddie Guerrero, anti-Mexican hate against Eddie Guerrero as a catalyst. So JBL wins the WWE Championship, and he's the longest running SmackDown champion in history at this point. So by the time we get to WrestleMania 21 in LA, fans just want to see him lose. LA is a huge Mexican American population. He beat the Mexican American hero, Eddie Guerrero. So remember when I talked about how, after Survivor Series, fans wanted to see Bret the Hitman Hart avenged. That's how he got into Austin McMahon, after WrestleMania 14, or how fans wanted to see Bob Backlund. American fans wanted to see Bob Backlund get avenged after he lost the title in 1983 to Iron Sheik. They want to see him get his ass kicked, and that's when they brought Hogan in. Well, this was the same thing. The Mexican American fans and the fans in general wanted to see JBL get a revenge because he held on to the title for so long. He was going around calling himself a wrestling god, right? So they wanted, and Cena was on hot. Cena was on fire. Cena was hot. So the star of WrestleMania 21, the two stars of it, the guy that they really thought was going to be the huge big star, was another guy that came over from OVW, Batista. Right? They were positioning him to be the man, right? Like another Goldberg or another Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar had just left the company. The Rock was now in movies. Stone Cold Steve Austin are retired, so they need a new star. They thought it would be Brock, but Brock was only there for 2 years, really on top. So they need a new star. They think it's going to be Batista because he fits the profile. No. Batista does win the World Heavyweight Championship that night against Triple H, but the one that people are really talking about is John Cena, who wins the WWE Championship against JBL. So he has a good year in 2005. It was that he goes to Raw, and they developed a storyline where him and the Raw general manager, who at that time was Eric Bischoff, have a feud. Like Eric Bischoff reprising the same role he did in WCW, in WWE, as the maniacal boss trying to screw Cena at every turn. And there's a funny skit at the Survivor Series 2005 where um, Eric Bischoff is saying, he's telling John Cena, I could see it in the future. Fans are going to chant, you screwed Cena. You screwed Cena. Like, they chanted to Vince McMahon or Shawn Michaels about how they screwed Bret Hart, right? So he goes, I didn't know you were into screwing men. And then from around the corner, Vince McMahon walks. He goes, Cena, what's good in the hood? What's up, my nigga? And he says the N-word, right? And then when Hulk Hogan had his racial controversy stuff, right? People were like, well, WWE canceled him, but look what Vince said at Survivor Series 2005. And then Booker T, who's around the corner from where Vince and Cena are, goes, and this was part of Booker's gimmick at the time, tell me he did not just say that, right? Him and Sharmell. You know what I mean? So there's that. And, he gets the news theme song, My Time Is Now by Trademark, and which is a sample of Annie Up by MOP. And he's off to the races. Around that time in 2005, he released a rap album too, My Time Is Now. So 2005 was really his year. Going into 2006, that's when he begins his feud with Edge. First he retires Chris Jericho at SummerSlam that year. Jericho had been burnt out as far as being a main eventer. So he and Cena have a barn burner at SummerSlam 2005, co-main evented by Hulk Hogan and Shawn Michaels that year. But in 2006, he loses the championship to Edge after Edge cashes in his Money in the Bank. Money in the Bank was a novel concept developed for WrestleMania by Chris Jericho, a ladder match concept where a briefcase with a contract opportunity lasting for a year would be present, and you grab it, and then you can cash it in anytime. So New Year's resolution 2006, and New Year's resolution 2005, 2006, sorry. New Year's resolution 2006, Edge comes in and he cashes the Money in the Bank on John Cena. And that begins the feud with Edge and John Cena, which culminates in their match at SummerSlam 2006. Now, Cena and Edge, have another match. ECW One Night Stand 06. Now, I was there for this. This was crazy because it was in the Manhattan Center, an old ECW stand ground. Oh, no, sorry. This wasn't Cena and Edge. This was Cena and RVD. The following year, RVD wins the Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 22. Now, RVD is a ECW staple. He never got a chance to win the ECW championship because by the time he ascended up to the top of the card, ECW was shut down. So there were rumors that they were making ECW in 2006 into a separate brand, right? And they were going to make him the face of it, but they were also going to put the WWE championship on him. So I was there, John Cena versus RVD. And the crowd was totally against Cena. They were against all the WWF wrestlers. Even Batista was pretty popular at that time. He was doing his match, and they were chanting, same old shit, same old shit. You know, they did the invasion storyline with the WWE wrestlers, JBL, Edge, led by Eric Bischoff, going to invade ECW, and Paul Heyman. They're cheering Paul Heyman. You know, it was the relaunch of ECW. It wouldn't last all that long because they do the December to Dismember pay-per-view in 2007. And, you know, Paul Heyman would leave the company and ECW would just become another brand on Sci-Fi, later to be replaced by NXT itself. Oh, sorry. December to Dismember is 2006. I got a little mixed up because I know that John Cena later wrestled in 2007 against um, uh, Umaga, right? So we go into that's 2006. He has a hell of a year in 2006. Like I said, most of his feuds are against Edge. 2007 is an interesting year for John because he gets injured. The end of the year, he gets injured. He has this long ass title reign after he defeats Edge and he wins the championship again. He has this long ass title reign. Then he gets injured by Randy Orton. And at this time now, we're starting after WrestleMania 22, where he wrestled Triple H. Now we're starting to get into the whole Cena sucks things. Fans are feeling like his gimmick is being shoved down people's throats. WWE launched WWE Studios, and he was the main star of its 2005 release, The Marine. His gimmick is changing. He's not doing the rap thing anymore, but he's still dressing like, you know, the rap star John Cena, and fans start to turn on him. In fact, during his feud with Randy Orton that year's SummerSlam 07, fans started to chant, you can't wrestle at John Cena. So he gets injured. Fans love it, right? Because now they get to see Jeff Hardy. Now they get to see Randy Orton. Now they get to see all these other wrestlers. And Cena is out of the way. But little did we know, he comes back at the Royal Rumble 2008 and he wins the shit. Madison Square Garden. I wasn't there, but I watched it. And at first, when they heard his music, they booed. But then when they saw him come out and he wins the championship, they were all over it. He goes on to WrestleMania that year, WrestleMania 24, in the three-way with Randy Orton and Triple H. He doesn't win the championship from Randy Orton. Randy Orton retains, but John Cena is back. And I feel like 2008, he had a kind of a low year. Like for most of the year, they had the belt on Triple H. You know, I felt like because of the backlash that they got, they didn't really want to put the belt on him. But at Survivor Series that year, CM Punk, who was the champion, gets jumped, and John Cena wins the WWE Championship again, going into 2008. And WrestleMania that following year, WrestleMania 25, he has a three-way with Edge. Is renewing his feud with Edge. He has a three-way with Edge and Big Show. Vicky Guerrero becomes involved. But one thing I want to mention, backtrack, 2007. WrestleMania 23 was him and Shawn Michaels. You had three main events. You had Bobby Lashley versus Umaga. with Trump and Vince McMahon in each corner. You had Undertaker versus Batista for the World Heavyweight Championship, and you had John Cena versus Shawn Michaels. It was supposed to be a rematch of the, 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 the previous year's main event, um, Triple H versus John Cena, but with Triple H and DX now, a reunited DX. But Triple H was out with an injury. He had torn his quad in the match against Rated RKO, Edge, and Randy Orton. Eric Bischoff was the referee. So John Cena had to step in, and it was a pretty good match. But a match they had that same year in London is, to me, considered one of the best Raw matches in the history of Raw 2007. But going back to 2009, Cena's year in 2009 was pretty decent. He teamed up with Batista a couple of times. The previous year in 2008, they teamed up and were tag team champions for a while. But nothing really to write home about. And then in 2010, one of WWE's worst years, he gets into a feud with the Nexus. The Nexus are a group of NXT wrestlers, developmental wrestlers, who invade the main roster of WWE, clearing out the whole roster, beating everybody up, including John Cena. So similar to the NWO, now the WWE wrestlers have to come together, heels and baby faces. Chris Jericho, John Cena, R-Truth, and Bret Hart, who returned as WWF wrestlers to take on this Nexus led by Wade Barrett. Now, the Nexus, and this starts at SummerSlam. The Nexus lose; they don't win. And this was partially due to John Cena. You know what I mean? Later on, it was revealed after SummerSlam 2010 that John Cena politicked and argued with Chris Jericho and Edge. Chris Jericho and Edge said, we got to let these guys go over. These guys are all new wrestlers. You had Wade Barrett. You had David Otunga, who was Jennifer Hudson's ex-husband. Right? You had a bunch of these new wrestlers, and Daniel Bryan was there, even though Daniel Bryan had basically switched sides because on an episode of NXT, he had been fired right after he was hired. The Miz was his coach for choking out Justin Roberts with a tie. So they don't win. So basically, like the invasion angle 9 years before, the Nexus fizzles out. They have this one storyline where if John Cena loses, he has to join the Nexus. It was kind of like the storyline in 1998 with Rey Mysterio and the LWO, or the storyline later on, I think it was in 2011 with Straight Edge Society, CM Punk's group, and Rey Mysterio. Where if Rey Mysterio lost, he had to also join that. But John Cena never joined. He never turned heel. you know what I mean? And that's what the fans really wanted. They wanted John Cena to turn heel. Never did. He would. Now, backtracking, 2011. 2011 was one of the biggest years for John Cena because it seemed like WWE was really on its last leg, to the point where they were discussing having a guest host for WrestleMania that year. And the guest host was supposed to be was supposed to be Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber was big at that time. You know, he had Baby, 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 and he had uh, One Last Lonely Girl. The Believers movie came out in theaters, but he was kind of loved and hated, kind of like the Swifties right now. So WWE was teasing that he would be the guest host of WrestleMania. No, it wasn't. The Rock came back to professional wrestling after 7 years of being gone. Now, prior to this, when The Rock came back um, for WrestleMania in Orlando at WrestleMania 24, John Cena had gone on late on some of the late shows and badmouthed The Rock. He talked about how The Rock never comes back, he never pays homage to WWE because in this era in The Rock's career, and I remember talking to Lisa about this. This was the late 2000s. The Rock was going around. He didn't want to be called The Rock anymore. He wanted to be called Dwayne Johnson. Just call him, and he lost a bunch of weight. Just call me Dwayne Johnson, he would say, right? And he wanted to basically disavow his connection to professional wrestling into the WWE. So a lot of fans thought that was bullshit. And Cena was giving voice to this. So, but The Rock comes back after 7 years, challenges John Cena, insults John Cena's clothing, says he's a fruity pebble motherfucker, and says that he will be the guest host at WrestleMania 27 in Atlanta. So I remember being hyped for this because I'm like, well, what's The Rock going to do? What's he going to do? Cena has a match with The Miz. Right? The Miz is on fire in 2011. He has Alex Riley as his bodyguard, basically, his Virgil. And he's doing his thing. So they go into the main event, and John Cena loses. One of the few times in wrestling history that a heel walked out of WrestleMania as the champion with interference from The Rock. Now, the series of interviews leading up to WrestleMania 28 in Miami is epic. Go back and look at this. Boots to asses, Fruity Pebbles, and The Rock and Cena returns to his rapper gimmick. The lead up, because they had a whole year to build. Right? The Rock was still doing movies, but he was back in professional wrestling. They built this up for a whole year. They announced it the night after WrestleMania 27, going into WrestleMania 28. And it was going to be huge. Flo Rida, who was on top of the charts at that time, Machine Gun Kelly, who was also at the top of the charts at that time, mentored by P. Diddy, was going to be there. It was a night, WrestleMania 28, with a lot of fans who watched WWE during the Attitude Era, but fell away in the years subsequently, returned back to professional wrestling. All my friends that hadn't watched wrestling in years, didn't know any of the new sort of characters, returned back to see John Cena versus The Rock once in a lifetime. Well, John Cena lost that night. And the iconic picture of John Cena sitting on the ramp like this, kind of like Cody Rhodes when he lost that WrestleMania 39 last year, all depressed and despondent. So, but the pay-per-view buys were tremendous. The Trump pay-per-view WrestleMania 23 had set the record, right? But this John Cena The Rock match, it dwarfed it. You know what I mean? Still to this day, this holds the record, WrestleMania 28, as the most purchased professional wrestling, not just WrestleMania, but the most purchased professional wrestling event of all time, right? They're going to New York the following year in 2013, and they want to do the exact same thing, the same match, once in a lifetime. Forget about that. Let's do it twice in a lifetime. But they want to do it for the title. So CM Punk, at the same event where The Rock and John Cena team up, Madison Square Garden. I was here there for this. Them teaming up, taking on The Miz and R-Truth. That's technically The Rock's return to wrestling after 7 years of being gone. Technically, he left in 2004 in a tag team match, him and Mankind versus Evolution. He came back in a tag team match, him and Cena versus R-Truth and The Miz. So at that same event, CM Punk defeats Alberto Del Rio for the championship. Now, CM Punk had been the champion previously, like I said, in 2008, but after winning Money in the Bank, then he wins Money in the Bank again the following year, WrestleMania 25, and he goes on to defeat Jeff Hardy and become the WWE champion. But then he lost the WWE championship after Kevin Nash showed up and powerbombed him. He wins. Kevin Nash shows up and powerbombs him, and Del Rio cashes in his Money in the Bank, and Del Rio becomes the champion. SummerSlam 2011, where he had a match with Cena. Right, so he wins the championship again. He goes on his 400 and something day run. Paul Heyman becomes his manager. Basically, he's doing the damn thing. Right? He already dropped his pipe bomb 2011, in which he was in the ring with Cena at that time. CM Punk had taken over the Nexus, the new Nexus now. The other older Nexus members moved over to SmackDown, where they became the core, right? And Cena's laying up in the ring. He's all beat up, and then CM Punk in a Stone Cold Steve Austin t-shirt cuts his pipe bomb. We all know about that. That's infamous wrestling lore, the pipe bomb. So CM Punk now the biggest heel. But one of the things I didn't like with CM Punk's title reign was that even though he was the champion, the focus was still on John Cena throughout 2012. Now I understand, that he was going to have the match with The Rock, but still, it kind of felt like, and I compared it to it at that time, Randy Savage's run in 1988. Randy Savage in 1988 was the WWF champion, but the focus was still on Hulk Hogan, everything Hulk Hogan did, Hulk Hogan's feuds and all that. It felt like, with Ted DiBiase and Andre the Giant. It didn't feel like they were really putting a rocket behind Punk. And sure enough, they weren't, because at the Royal Rumble 2013, The Rock comes back, defeats CM Punk, ends his historic reign, and John Cena wins his second Royal Rumble 2013, and he's going on to face The Rock in MetLife Stadium. The first WrestleMania there, wouldn't be the last, which I was there. And the second match wasn't as good, guys. It didn't have the magic that the first match had. In fact, we went away. The people that were there, I was there with my fiance that night, and the people that went away, the match that they talked about was Undertaker versus CM Punk, because CM Punk had previously poured out Paul Bearer's ashes. Paul Bearer, Undertaker's longtime manager, had just passed away in real life, so that's what they mainly talked about. And many people felt that CM Punk should have ended the streak. The streak ended a year later in New Orleans at WrestleMania 30. But yeah, WrestleMania 29, John Cena's second match with The Rock, a dud. And then for the rest of 2013, he goes on to have the match with Daniel Bryan, in which Daniel Bryan wins but gets screwed by the Authority because Randy Orton cashes his Money in the Bank. And that begins the beginning of the not the beginning of the Yes Movement, but the Yes Movement, which will become the centerpiece of WrestleMania 40, picks up steam. So Now they're kind of in 2014. Him and Randy Orton have the unification match, the World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE Championship. It's now the same title. So 2013, 2014, they're kind of trying to move John Cena to the periphery, right? They're trying to move him out of the limelight, as it were. But something happens. As they're trying to make Daniel Bryan the centerpiece, the Yes Movement happens. It takes off with a bang. But Daniel Bryan gets injured. So the match they were supposed to have with uh, Brock Lesnar, just to backtrack a little, had returned in 2012, the night after WrestleMania. Cena had the big match with The Rock, and Brock Lesnar comes back after being in the UFC, being UFC heavyweight champion, right? Breaking all kinds of pay-per-view records in the UFC. And it was kind of funny because it was like Cena's career kind of paralleled that of Brock Lesnar's in a way. Because um, when Brock Lesnar won the UFC championship, the pay-per-view the same month was when Cena won the WWE championship again. You know what I mean? And they kind of crossed paths in the early days when John Cena was on SmackDown, but not really all that much. But now Brock is back, Heyman is back in WWE, and they have a scuffle, and he legitimately that night, Brock Lesnar breaks John Cena's nose. Unfortunately, at Extreme Rules 2012, John Cena wins. So John Cena and Brock Lesnar have a history. So now that Brock has ended the Undertaker's, we're fast forwarding 2 more years. Now that Brock Lesnar has ended the Undertaker's streak at WrestleMania 30, now he's a big star. He was supposed to take the belt off Daniel Bryan, but like I said, Daniel Bryan was injured. So he has a match with Cena, the first SummerSlam in New York in many years, the Barclays Center, the first one in Brooklyn ever. And John Cena gets his ass beat. I remember I'm watching this with a child. You know what I mean? My stepson, right? and and he was a huge John Cena fan, right? So as John Cena is getting beaten up, right, a lot by Brock Lesnar, he says, I know Cena can't lose because Cena never gives up. That was Cena's mantra, never give up. A rise above the hate was another Cena mantra. But unfortunately, Cena does get his ass beat. And that's where Brock comes up with the concept, the slogan, Suplex City. And Brock Lesnar, at that time, uh, SummerSlam 2014, takes on a whole new persona with Cena, off the back of Cena. And Cena becomes the U.S. champion. He starts the USA Open challenges, in which he again faces Del Rio. And when Del Rio comes back to the company, but 2015, and it culminates in a match with him at WrestleMania 31. Against Rusev. Now, WrestleMania 30, he had the match with the Wyatt family. Now, that feud with the Wyatt family, that's one that I really love. When Bray Wyatt died last year, that was the one I thought of. You know what I mean? I think it's about to be like Hell in a Cell, right? Going into that pay-per-view. And Bray Wyatt comes out with the Wyatt family, and everything goes dark, and Bray Wyatt starts to sing, he's got the whole world in his hands, he's got the whole wide world in his hands, but really slow and ominously. right? Scare and the kids come out and the crowd sings, "He got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole. He got the itty bitty babies in his hands. He's got the itty bitty babies in his hands." And then he goes, "He got the whole C Nation." And then he goes, "He got the whole C Nation in his hands." And Victoria is running around, is running around singing this song for like a week straight. But it scared a lot of kids, man. Believe me, it scared a lot of children. You know what I mean? This Bray Wyatt John Cena feud. So that's 20. That's 2014. 2015, like I said, he started doing the open challenges. And hell, Jon Stewart at that year's SummerSlam got into got into a feud with him. You know what I'm saying? It was um, it was him and Seth Rollins for the U.S. Championship. Night of Champions 2015 is one that will stick in people's minds forever, and it does involve John Cena because Seth um, Seth Rollins was supposed to wrestle twice that night. I'm jumping around. This is May. This is Night of Champions, right? Seth Rollins was supposed to wrestle twice that night against John Cena for the U.S. Championship, and then to defend his championship against Sting. It was like Sting's first WWE pay per view after he lost to his first ever WWE, his second ever WWE pay per view. His first was when he lost to Triple H at WrestleMania 31, right? After being in WCW and TNA for years, and never being in the World Wrestling Federation. So, so uh, he has the match with Cena, and then he does the buckle bomb to Sting, almost putting Sting out of commission. By actually putting Sting out of commission, it wasn't until 2020, like 5 years later, that Sting would be able to even return to wrestling, in AEW. But Cena was a part of that. Cena, now as U.S. champion, was doing pretty good with these U.S. Open challenges that he was making. 2014 was one of his better years, going into 2015. 2016, he really didn't do much. Him rekindling his feud with the Wyatt family. Him and the Rock did a run-in at WrestleMania 32, trying to save the event because WrestleMania 32, for those that don't know, 2016 was one of the Snake Bit shows. They wanted Sting to be there. Sting was possibly going to have his match with The Undertaker. Sting couldn't be there, so the last minute they called Shane McMahon back to the company, who hadn't been in the company for 8 years. Right? Cena was injured. He couldn't be on the show. The match with Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar was shitty. The main event, now they're trying to, 2015 onward, they're trying to push Roman Reigns like he's the new Cena, half and half. You know what I mean? Half be heel, half babyface, but it's not working. He wins the Royal Rumble 2015, and The Rock comes out, try to salvage him. It doesn't work. We talked about it before. In Philly, he got his ass booed. It's not working with Roman Reigns like it worked with Cena. And they figure, hey, Cena's second biggest opponent was Triple H 10 years before at WrestleMania 22. So let's put him against Triple H again at WrestleMania 32. It doesn't work. It sucks. The fans boo it completely. I mean, they cheered when he speared Stephanie McMahon, but that was about it. And then they realized, oh, Roman Reigns is the champion. Oh, shit, we hate this guy. Just like John Cena at the Royal Rumble 2008. He doesn't do much there. Him and The Rock are running with the Wyatt family. And from that point on, 2016, 2017, 2018, Like I said, he has the match with Seth Rollins at SummerSlam, in which Jon Stewart of the Daily Show interferes and cost him. I wasn't there. I wasn't there. It was in New York. I was watching it with my ex, Alex at the time, Vicky's mom. Uh, so we're watching it online. We're talking about each and everything that happened that year. Of course, that was the Undertaker. It was main evented by the Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar, where the Undertaker sits up and laughs, and Brock Lesnar's cracking up too. It's a meme currently now, and that's pretty much it. He doesn't do anything really in 2017. Doesn't really do anything in 2018. 2019. Speaking of the Undertaker, John Cena does have WrestleMania 35, an impromptu match with the Undertaker. It was Undertaker supposed to be. It was Undertaker versus Elias. That's what they were doing in 2019. The Walk with Elias storyline. And John Cena sitting in the audience. They have nothing for John Cena for that year's WrestleMania, and he has an impromptu match with the Undertaker, in which the Undertaker wins, of course. And then in 2020, COVID happens, and Roman Reigns, who's the guy they've been pushing for the last 3 or 4 years now, is no longer with the company. So they got to call on a lot of their old stars. They call on Undertaker and they call on John Cena, because the main event is Drew McIntyre, who's the new guy that they're pushing at this point. Not new. He was with the three-man band with Heath Slater, Jinder Mahal, and himself, but he got fired. He went to the Indies and he remade himself, and he won the Royal Rumble in 2020. So they were trying to relaunch him by having him beat Brock Lesnar. So, but that event doesn't have much steam. Goldberg, the Fiend lost to Goldberg. The Fiend was been tearing it up prior to that year in his debut at SummerSlam 2019. He'd been the champion, but the Fiend lost to Goldberg earlier in the year in the Saudi Arabia show, and fans were pissed about that. I have a video on it when it first happened. Goldberg winning the championship back from the Fiend in 2019. So fans were pissed. Like, no Roman Reigns, and you have Goldberg versus Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre versus Brock Lesnar for the 2 titles. So they got to call back their old stars. They have the Boneyard match with Undertaker and AJ Styles, which is pretty cool. But the match that nobody will ever, and I said it when it happened. Go back and look at my review for WrestleMania 36. I said, this match, the COVID Mania, this match nobody will ever forget. And that is the Fire 5 Funhouse match. This match wasn't even a match. This match was just the Fiend playing mind games with John Cena. A whole bunch of vignettes, the old Nitro vignettes with the Fiend playing Eric Bischoff, the Fiend and John Cena coming out as Hulk Hogan, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, playing the air guitar with the WCW Championship. And at the end, it says, "You're the most overrated star in history," as the Fiend delivers his sister Abigail to John Cena. So this match was a revolutionary match that will always stick in fans' mind. But after that, we don't really see Cena. He goes away again, starts to make movies again. He's basically doing what he accused The Rock of doing. Until 2021. Roman Reigns is now a heel. Roman Reigns turned heel at SummerSlam 2020 when he returned, beat up the Fiend, beat up Braun Strowman, and has now the guidance of Paul Heyman. Brock Lesnar isn't there no more. Brock Lesnar took time off. So who's going to save the fans from the reign of terror of Roman Reigns? John Cena. They have a match, WrestleMania, SummerSlam 2021. John Cena loses. Now, this isn't the first time that their paths crossed. When in 2016, when Roman Reigns had his infamous suffering succotash son promo, It was against John Cena. But John Cena, more than anybody, should know how Roman Reigns feels because the audience was always split on Cena as well, you know? And then after 2021, again, we don't really see Cena all that much. You know, he has a few run-ins with Imperium, and then just recently he had a feud with Solo Sikoa, in which he lost. So they're kind of bringing him back periodically. But now he's ready to retire. He's ready to call it quits. Some of my highlights from John Cena's career, match-wise, 2007, although that was the year he got injured and the year that they really started to boo his ass, was really a highlight for me as far as his matches. He had a great match with Umaga at the Royal Rumble. He had a great match with Bobby Lashley at the Great American Bash. And he had an okay match with the Great Khali at One Night Stand that year. So, and of course, the match with Shawn Michaels. So, 2007 was a pretty good year for him, considering that 2007 wasn't a great year for the company itself after what happened to Chris Benoit and the bad press that they received. John Cena was the guy. John Cena was the guy for the last 10 years, for 10 years straight, carried the company on his back. Like I said, when a media storm came after the WWE for steroid abuse, first with the death of Eddie Guerrero in 2005, and then with the death of Chris Benoit, and the death and double murder-suicide, the hardest time in the history of WWE, John Cena carried it on his back. John Cena carried it on his back in the early 2000s when Brock Lesnar, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and The Rock left. John Cena was the guy. He was the workhorse. He was always there. And who can remember in 2011, WWE was having a pay-per-view, and we had just caught Osama bin Laden after chasing his ass for 10 years, and John Cena was the first celebrity that we saw saying, besides Barack Obama, saying, we got him. So John Cena has always been that kind of patriot. And you know what? People clown John Cena. Even me, people said that John Cena was whack. He was 5 moves of doom. But you know what? We're going to miss him when that music hits. And we go, Cena, let's go Cena. Cena sucks. Let's go Cena. Cena sucks. Battling between the kids and the adult fans. Because the adult fans from the Attitude Era, they didn't like him. He represented the downfall, the change of professional wrestling from where it was in the Attitude Era to now. I have a lot of people that say they stopped watching when John Cena became the face of WWE. But for a whole group, it's like the Star Wars prequels. For a whole group and a whole generation of people, they grew up with John Cena. They grew up with John Cena as their Hulk Hogan. They grew up with John Cena as their Stone Cold Steve Austin. The kids nowadays, the younger generation, Gen Alpha, right? Not Gen Z like Vicky, but Gen Alpha, the younger generation than even Vicky, is growing up with Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes in that same way that generation of fans grew up with John Cena, and my generation of fans grew up with Hulk Hogan or Stone Cold Steve Austin. You know what I mean? So what they're seeing is the retirement of a legend saying goodbye and having a chance to say goodbye properly. Because Bob Backlund, who was the main star from 1978 to 1983, he never got a chance to say goodbye because he never came back to the company until 10 years later. Bruno Sammartino, he did have a chance to say goodbye. 1980, Shea Stadium, his retirement match against Larry Zbyszko. And he was on top from 1963 to 1980. Hulk Hogan never really got a chance to say goodbye, really. Hulk Hogan never had his swan song. The match he had in 1993 at the King of the Ring with Yokozuna wasn't a real swan song. Later on, he came back and he wrestled The Rock 9 years later at WrestleMania 18, and that was a swan song. Or people will say his match with Randy Orton in Boston at SummerSlam 06 was his swan song, but again, not really. He never really had that kind of send-off. The Undertaker did have that kind of send-off. Survivor Series 2020, He had that kind of send off. The match he had with AJ Styles at WrestleMania 36, that was his send off. Ric Flair, of course, his send off is famous. The match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 24, Leave the Memories Alone the night after, the celebration of his career. And Ric Flair didn't even wrestle the majority of his career in the WWE, mostly wrestled in WCW and the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions. But still, he meant a lot to professional wrestling as a whole, so they had to do it for him. They never did it for Randy Savage. They did it for Shawn Michaels after he retired at WrestleMania 26. The night after. They never did it for Bret Hart, and they never really did it for Stone Cold Steve Austin. You could say Stone Cold Steve Austin's swan song and goodbye was at WrestleMania 38 when he wrestled Kevin Owens. But even that wasn't good enough. They haven't done it for The Rock yet because The Rock's on the board of directors now, and he has a lot more to do. He was just at WrestleMania this past year, so he still has the big match with Roman Reigns coming up. So I suspect that John Cena will be at the top of the class for 2025's Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And I'm there for him. John Cena is the man. You can't see him, but you can definitely see him now. I never liked him, really. I mean, he's the favorite for, they say, people with mental disabilities. And he had that thing with the Oscars, the humiliation tribute that me and Lisa talked about. But it is what it is. His gimmick was a gimmick of the times. Eminem was on top of the charts. Eminem was the first white rapper really ever to be taken seriously, not counting the Beastie Boys in hip hop. So John Cena's emergence in professional wrestling matched that. So anyway, good luck to John Cena, what he continues to do, and I'll be looking forward to his retirement tour. Who's he gonna wrestle? Who's he gonna go out there with? Who could give the rub to? Could he give the rub to Jacob Fatu? Maybe, because Jacob Fatu, the Samoan werewolf, is tearing it up right now as the enforcer of Bloodline 2.0. Could he give the rub to maybe a CM Punk? CM Punk, can he have history? Wrestled 2 SummerSlams back to back. One was a triple threat, but still, they wrestled a lot. See, who can he get in the ring with there and mix it up with? That fans will want to see. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see my next videos coming out. Love you guys. Peace. Thank you, Lisa, for contributing.